Welcome everyone. We're just at the top of the hour, but we're seeing that lots of people are still arriving. So we're just going to wait 2 more minutes to allow people to arrive, and then we'll get started. And thanks for your patience, and great to have you this afternoon. Welcome, Mark.
Hey, how you guys doing?
All right, good. Okay, you sound good. You could go on mute as well.
Okay.
All right, we still have people arriving. I'm going to propose we start in 1 minute. Okay, I think we have critical mass. We're going to get started. So welcome everyone to the third of 9 virtual regional workshops for advancing 30 by 30 in climate smart lands. And today we're in the Central Coast region. And we're excited to have you join us, and we look forward to collaborating with you today. My name is Eric Ponsley. I'm with Crimson West, and I'll be one of your co-facilitators for today's regional workshops. So we're going to start with a few housekeeping items. So the first has to do with the meeting recording. This workshop.
Chào đón tất cả mọi người tới tham dự cuộc họp ngày hôm nay.
Oh, if we could have the interpreters go on mute, please. The workshop's being recorded for further viewing, and it will be posted on the website, which is www.californianature.ca.gov. And we're also streaming with the workshop live on the CNRA YouTube page. Now, speaking of interpretation assistance, this meeting is being interpreted in Spanish, Vietnamese, Cantonese, and Mandarin. And if you need interpretation services, we're going to ask that you please provide your language in the chat, or that you raise your hand with the raise hand function. And you do that by clicking the reactions button at the bottom. The chat is at the bottom too. And if you're listening by phone and want interpretation, you would dial *9, and we'll describe this in greater detail. So in order to access the audio channel for any of these languages, that you'll click the interpretation button, which is the globe icon highlighted on the slide at the bottom of the Zoom taskbar. And the button will appear after we go through these instructions, which we're going to do in multiple languages. After we repeat these instructions in all the languages, you'll be able to join the audio channel for that language. And again, at the end, the interpretation button will appear at that point, and then you'll be able to select your language. So we'll now invite our interpreters to repeat these instructions in language. And we'll start with Spanish, and I'd like to invite Victor Hernandez to join.
Thanks, Eric. Muy buenas tardes. Esta reunión será interpretada en el español, vietnamita, cantonés y mandarín. Para poder acceder al canal de audio de cualquiera de estos idiomas, por favor haga clic en el botón de interpretación, que va a ser un icono del globo o un símbolo del mundo que aparecerá en la barra de tareas de Zoom al fondo de su pantalla. Entonces, después de eso aparecerá un menú, y entonces usted podrá seleccionar el idioma que usted necesite. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Moving on to the interpretation instructions in Vietnamese. Tiffany Tong, please. You can unmute yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Tiffany. Nếu quý vị cần các dịch vụ phiên dịch, xin ghi rõ tên ngôn ngữ của quý vị vào khung hội thoại của chúng tôi sẽ đáp ứng nhu cầu của quý vị. Quý vị có thể chú ý thấy rằng nhóm chúng tôi sử dụng chức năng giơ tay bằng cách nhấn vào nút phản hồi để tham gia hội thảo bằng tiếng Tây Ban Nha, tiếng Việt, tiếng phổ thông hay tiếng quan toại. Xin nhấn nút phiên dịch ở cuối màn hình của quý vị, sau đó xin chọn ngôn ngữ của quý vị. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Tiffany. And from Mandarin, Kathy Wu, please.
Hello， 大家下午好，我的名字是 Kathy Wu， 我将会为这个会议做国语普通话同声传译，欢迎大家来参加我们的会议。需要中文翻译，用口译的按钮是一个地球仪的样子，在你的屏幕下面那个 taskbar 那个任务栏下面，国语普通话可以可以选 Mandarin 粤语广东话就选 Cantonese。想看英文字幕呢，就按 CC。如果想互换英文国语，你可以互换在过程中。谢谢。Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. And finally, instructions in Cantonese by Wei Tang.
Hi, this is Wei Quinn. Hi, 接住落去今晚咧，係我會係幫忙大家做呢個係廣東話嘅翻譯嘅。咁咧就係今晚嘅活動咧係將會咧係有係西語啦，有越南文啦，有廣東話同埋呢個係國語普通話嘅係同聲翻譯嘅。咁為咗咧係使用咧係恰當嘅聲頻咧係符合你嘅語言需要咧，請你咧係喺呢個熒幕嘅底部咧係撳一撳咧呢個係傳譯嗰個係按鈕。咁咧就係嗰個形狀係一個係地球嘅圖標啦。咁就喺你個係soon 嗰個係任務嘅欄目嗰度嘅嚇。咁當你係撳落去之後咧，就會有一個係選項嘅出現啦。咁你可以選擇係適合你嘅語言。咁喺我哋嘅情況，請你揀呢個係廣東話嚇。咁咧就係呢個語言咧係以上幾位嘅係唔同嘅翻譯已經係重複咗啦。咁我講完之後咧，咁咧就係主持人就會係開始呢個係選擇呢個語言㗎啦。咁請大家咧喺我講完之後咧就係去選啦，咁就可以聽到我係接落去咧喺會議當中咧係同聲翻譯㗎啦。Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Wei. Thank you to all our interpreters. We now invite participants to join the interpretation audio channels. If desired, you please click the interpretation button. It's the globe icon in the Zoom taskbar below. So thanks everyone for your patience there. So a couple more pieces of instruction, closed captioning. So we have closed captioning available for this meeting. If you'd like to use this option, please click the closed caption icon that's in the Zoom taskbar. And then you can either select the subtitles button to view subtitles on the screen at the bottom, or the live transcript button to see the full transcript on the side panel. All right, a few more slides. How to participate. So participants will generally be muted during the workshop and will be participating primarily via polling. So no video is required. If you need technical assistance at any time, please contact the technical support team by using the chat button in the Zoom taskbar. And we'll also be sharing relevant links through the chat feature as well. So it's highlighted there at the bottom of your screen. Participants can also request technical assistance by using the raised hand function. And here you click on the reactions bar or button in the Zoom taskbar, and then you would click the raise your hand button. And if you're participating by phone, you dial *9 to raise your hand. Super. So a couple productive workshop tips. We have a large number of members of the public participating today, both virtually via the webinar and also by phone. And we want to make this workshop as productive as possible for everyone. And so as we move through the meeting, please follow the following guidelines. We ask you first to be respectful, both to each other as participants with different perspectives to share, but also to the workshop agenda and the objectives we're trying to achieve. Secondly, we note that threatening, profane, or other inappropriate language is not allowed in the workshop. And then finally, that disruptive participants will be removed as needed. So we invite your cooperation in making this a productive meeting for everyone. Thanks in advance. So 2 more slides to complete the intros here. First, want to note that co-facilitating the meeting with me today are Cece Vu and Jenna Tourget from Kearns and West, and joining us from the California Natural Resources Agency are Jennifer Norris, and Jennifer is the Deputy Secretary for Biodiversity and Habitat. We also have Amanda Hansen, who's the Deputy Secretary for Climate Change, and then also Mark Gold, who's the Deputy Secretary for Oceans and Coastal Policy, and also the Executive Director for the California Ocean Protection Council. These regional workshops are designed to ensure that the state hears from a broad cross-section of stakeholders with vital interests in how California achieves our goals of conserving 30% of state lands and coastal waters by 2030 and accelerating nature-based solutions. And so our objectives for today's workshop are threefold. First, it's to provide an overview of nature-based solutions and relevant action items in Governor Newsom's Executive Order N-82-20. Second, an objective of introducing the Natural and Working Lands Climate Smart Strategy and Pathways to 30 by 30. And then finally, the primary objective is to hear from you and to gain your regional perspectives and ideas around these broader topics. So in terms of agenda review, we'll be spending about 40 minutes providing you with updates on these initiatives, and then the rest of our time will be spent conducting polling activities aimed to gather insights, experiences, and ideas from you all as members of the public. After brief presentations by Secretary Wade Crowfoot, Jennifer Norris, Amanda Hansen, and Mark Gold of the California Natural Resources Agency, we will kick off the public engagement portion of the meeting with a poll to learn about you and your priorities. We'll then break into 3 smaller groups to engage in interactive polling, asking a range of questions on a variety of topics. And these breakout sessions will go quickly, so we ask you to please respond to the polling questions as they come up as concisely as possible so that everyone gets a chance to contribute. And we want to need your experiences and ideas as we work together to create substantive long-term strategies that the state will implement to achieve this goal. And so thanks for your patience. Now I would like to turn it over to Jen Norris of the California Natural Resources Agency to share a tribal acknowledgement.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Jennifer Norris, Deputy Secretary for Biodiversity and Habitat. Thank you all for being here. I would like to start by acknowledging the importance of tribal communities in this process. Our tribal partners are integral to achieving the goals set forth in the governor's executive order. We know that by working together, we can further safeguard the environment, preserve tribal cultural practices, and strengthen relationships between the state and tribal nations. The Resources Agency is currently engaging tribes through government-to-government consultations. In addition, in coming months, we will be holding tribal listening sessions to engage tribes, solicit tribal input, and explore opportunities to collaborate. We look forward to working with our tribal partners and encourage those who would like to connect with us on tribal perspectives to visit our website to see a schedule of the listening sessions. Please visit our website, www.resources.ca.gov. I also want to acknowledge any elected officials that joined today. Thank you for your participation. Public engagement is critically important to the state, even as we continue to navigate the COVID-19 pandemic. We know that virtual meetings are not the ideal way to have a conversation, but we didn't want to delay this important work on 30 by 30 and climate smart lands. So while this isn't how we envisioned, we do hope these meetings can be a productive and positive process for everyone involved. Collaboration is essential to achieving the goals outlined in the executive order. As we begin our conversations today, I want to underscore our commitment to engaging all voices, all perspectives, and to advancing equity in everything we do. We will begin today with opening remarks from Wade Crowfoot, Secretary of the California Natural Resources Agency, which protects and manages California's natural resources, including our forests, rivers and waterways, coast and ocean, fish and wildlife, water and energy. And now Secretary Crowfoot.
I'm Wade Crowfoot, our California Natural Resources Secretary. Welcome and thank you for joining one of 9 virtual regional workshops to advance nature-based solutions across our state. Last fall, Governor Newsom issued an executive order that elevated the role of nature in both combating climate change, maintaining and protecting our biological diversity, and achieving more equitable access to our outdoors. In our agency, the Natural Resources Agency, we're really excited about the governor's leadership that's, of course, matched by our legislature on expanding environmental conservation across our state to achieve these multiple objectives. We live in a remarkable state, known around the world for our natural diversity of plants and animals, topographies, ecosystems, and our cultural diversity, where we are succeeding and thriving across all conceivable differences within our human species. The work that you'll be involved in and the input you provide will ensure that looking forward in coming years and decades, we craft smart, ambitious, but achievable strategies to expand environmental conservation and utilize nature in the fight against climate change. In that executive order that Governor Newsom issued last fall, he called for conserving 30% of our state's land and coastal waters by 2030, which we call the 30 by 30 target. He also called for the development of a climate smart land strategy so we can understand how we better manage both our natural and working lands to both remove carbon from the atmosphere and protect people and nature from the impacts of climate change. The best ideas we have and the most effective actions will achieve multiple benefits. At the same time, combating climate change, preserving biodiversity, and expanding recreational and outdoor access for all Californians. We know there are no one-size-fits-all solutions from Sacramento for this work, and our regions are so different in both the challenges they face and the opportunities they offer, that these regional workshops are really critical to help us understand what is the situation in your part of California? What are critical priorities in this area that we need to address? What are challenges you face to environmental conservation and climate action and equitable access? And importantly, what are opportunities for our state agency and more importantly, our state government to help you seize these opportunities in your region to expand equitable, thoughtful, sustainable, balanced environmental conservation. So we're really excited with your participation and look forward to these regional workshops figuring in and informing both a strategy for the achievement of the 30 by 30 target and our climate smart land strategy coming up in recent months. Really appreciate all that you do in your own lives on these important topics, and very excited to hear from you today and in coming weeks and months. Thank you.
Great. We appreciate that message from the Secretary. And now I'd like to turn it over to Amanda Hansen, the Deputy Secretary for Climate Change. Amanda.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Eric. Thank you all for being here. I'm Amanda Hansen, and I'm going to provide some background on why Governor Newsom issued an executive order on nature-based solutions, what nature-based solutions are, and why they matter. Secretary Crowfoot teed up the focus of our workshop today. And so after I outline what the natural and working lands climate smart strategy is intended to do and how it might support your regional priorities, I will hand it off to Jen to talk about our 30 by 30 effort. Climate change and biodiversity loss are among the top 5 threats humanity will face in the next 10 years. And as we all know too well, California is not immune to these crises. Last year alone, wildfires burned over 4 million acres in California. Lives were lost, Homes and businesses were destroyed. Public health suffered from hazardous air quality, and nature that we treasure is gone. These fires took place in the middle of a deadly pandemic and heat wave, and on the heels of the most extreme drought in the state's history. California is considered one of the world's 36 biodiversity hotspots because of its high concentration of unique species that are also experiencing unprecedented threats, including climate change. The governor issued this NatureBased Solutions executive order in direct response to these threats and outlined a comprehensive and results-oriented agenda for California, which brings us to what are nature-based solutions and why are they important? When we talk about nature-based solutions, we're talking about actions that work with and enhance nature to help address societal challenges. And they're important because they provide so many benefits, many of which we depend on for our very well-being. This slide shows a few examples of nature-based solutions that address climate change and protect biodiversity. So the circular image you see in the middle is an example of community greening, a suite of nature-based solutions that can cool communities facing extreme heat, reduce energy costs, allow soils to better absorb water, expand access to nature, enhance biodiversity, reduce the impacts of pollution, and increase quality of life. The top right image shows wetlands and riparian areas, which sequester carbon, reduce flood risk, filter pollution, and protect habitat. The middle right image is an example of an agricultural nature-based solution. This hedgerow supports pollinators, it improves habitat, conserves water, enhances our food supply, and contributes to our economic prosperity. Finally, the lower right image speaks to the many benefits nature-based climate solutions in our forests deliver to Californians. Healthy forests reduce the threat of catastrophic wildfire and serve as a carbon sink. They can also capture and clean our water supply, improve air quality, provide habitat for wildlife, and support local economies. Today's workshop is focused on two particular deliverables of the governor's nature-based solutions executive order, our Pathways to 30 by 30 document, and Natural and Working Lands Climate Smart Strategy. I'm going to provide an update on the Climate Smart Strategy, which the Resources Agency was tasked with coordinating in close partnership with many of our sister agencies. I'm going to quickly outline our goals for this strategy and explore how it might support your regional priorities. Natural and working lands is the term we use in California to describe the nature-based solutions sector, which consists of the iconic landscapes we know and love, our forests, wetlands, croplands, community green spaces, grasslands, deserts, and more. These lands cover 90% of the state's 104 million acres. And while our lands offer significant opportunity to meet California's climate goals, they have been the missing piece of our state's climate agenda. And the Natural and Working Lands Climate Smart Strategy is intended to close this gap. We're excited to align relevant existing state efforts under one cohesive strategy and identify land management actions that help us protect vulnerable communities, achieve carbon neutrality, improve public health and safety, and expand economic opportunity. So what does this mean for your region? We want to learn from you about nature-based solutions that are important and how a statewide strategy might support the Central Coast's environmental, economic, and equity priorities. For example, sea level rise is projected to have significant consequences for this region's coastal communities. Dangerous and costly flooding with disproportionate impacts on vulnerable communities. So are there nature-based solutions that can reduce these risks, such as wetland restoration, living shorelines, or stormwater parks? The science also points to major future swings between extremely wet and extremely dry years for the Central Coast. Are there nature-based climate solutions you're considering to reduce associated risks, such as community greening or native plant initiatives? Agricultural production and nature tourism are threatened by climate change. Are there actions the state's strategy can prioritize to support these sectors in adapting to climate change in the Central Coast region? And are there nature-based solutions that you are successfully deploying that should be amplified in the state strategy? And finally, are there careers in the natural and working land sector you'd like to elevate in the Central Coast region, such as native plant landscapers, community foresters, or carbon farmers? Now I'm going to turn it over to Jen. Thank you all again for being here.
Hi again, I'm Jennifer Norris, and I am running point on our 30 by 30 initiative. So as you've heard, our goal is to conserve 30% of our lands and coastal waters by 2030. And we want to do so in a manner that protects biodiversity, combats climate change, increases access to nature, and safeguards our economic sustainability and food supply. We are being purposeful in our approach. We want to conserve places that effectively protect the biological diversity of California, our unique plants and animals. We want to conserve lands and waters that meaningfully address climate change in the ways that Amanda outlined. And we want to conserve in a way that provides equitable access to nature and its benefits, like clean water, clean air, climate resilience, and recreation. So what kinds of places are we talking about? Here are a few examples from this region. The Carrizo Plain, a 200,000 acre ecologically and culturally significant ecosystem and site of one of the best super blooms going. This Bureau of Land Management monument is open to hiking, biking, camping, and horseback riding. It's home to the San Joaquin kit fox, pronghorn, and several rare California plants, like the California jewel flower and San Joaquin woolly threads. Or this place, Elkhorn Slough. This 7-mile-long slough and estuary on Monterey Bay is the largest tract of tidal salt marsh in California outside of San Francisco Bay. It provides habitat for hundreds of resident and migratory birds, and species like the southern sea otter, Santa Cruz long-toed salamander, eelgrass, and pickleweed. This important wetland sequesters significant amounts of carbon and filters pollutants, improving water quality in the bay. And finally, Morro Bay State Marine Recreation Management Area. Spanning 3 square miles, this site provides protection for one of the few estuary areas of the Central Coast. Recreational fishing and oyster hunting is allowed here, as is waterfowl hunting. This special place also provides habitat for the threatened southern sea otter and endangered tidewater goby. Achieving 30 by 30 will rely on the protection of diverse places like this across the state. Good conservation can happen on every conceivable land type and through lots of different strategies. As the Secretary said, one size does not fit all. At the end of the day, conservation happens locally, so we need to work together. By February 2022, we will deliver our Pathways to 30 by 30 document, which will identify opportunities and strategies to achieve 30 by 30. It will also identify challenges to meeting our goals. This document is intended to set us on the path to successful implementation of 30 by 30. Today, we want to hear from your region and your perspectives on what those opportunities and challenges are. We're interested to know how you think we should go about it. What strategies to conserve lands and coastal waters are most effective in this region? Because we want to invest in successful approaches. Please tell us what those are. At the same time, we'd like to know which strategies are more challenging and why, so we can work to address gaps. Your insights today will be used to develop our document and to help us define conservation. You'll be asked later to share what conservation looks like to you. The executive order called for the establishment of this collaborative approach in recognition of the fact that partners across the state have experience and expertise that we can learn from. This conversation is the beginning of what we hope is an ongoing partnership. 30 by 30 isn't a new mandate and won't be accomplished from the top down. By sharing your insights with us, we want to learn how we can be more effective partners. Our ultimate goal is for 30 by 30 to become what's called an open source movement, for people across the state from a diverse array of sectors to commit to achieving 30 by 30 and work with us in partnership. Thank you again for being here. I'm really looking forward to hearing your ideas. Now I'll hand it over to my colleague, Mark Gold.
Thanks, Jen. I'm glad to be here today as we focus on some of the most pressing issues facing California's work to protect our natural habitats, combat climate change, and ensure biodiversity in this great state. For those of you not familiar with the Ocean Protection Council, we have a mission to ensure that California maintains healthy, resilient, and productive ocean and coastal ecosystems. OPC works across various state agencies to coordinate activities related to ocean protection. And we also establish policies that facilitate the collection and sharing of scientific data, as well as identify policy areas that need to be addressed at the state and federal levels. State waters run from the tide lines to 3 miles out, and 16% of coastal waters are part of the statewide Marine Protected Area Network. That's 124 MPAs in the network. 9% of state coastal marine waters are protected through no-take reserves, and another 7% are limited commercial and/or recreational take MPAs. The MPA network is approaching a decadal review of this program by the end of 2022. And currently, and this is very important for everyone to understand, we are not looking at MPA expansion as part of the 30 by 30 path for the ocean. That could change after the decadal review, but as of right now, putting the pathway document together for next year, it won't be part of that. Our coastal regions and oceans are important ecosystems that are not only places where species thrive, but also serve as main attractions for California residents and visitors who want to enjoy the sand, water, and features of our coastline. These areas are also integral to our economy with aquaculture, energy generation, and the network of ports up and down the state that are essential to the movement of goods in and out of California and the entire nation. Climate change threatens the coast and ocean with rising sea levels and ocean acidification, while other coastal resources suffer from the impacts of water pollution, harmful algae blooms, and habitat loss. We must take steps now to prevent further erosion of the coast and loss of rocky intertidal habitats, wetlands and beaches, and the loss of kelp forests, as well as other marine life. In order to develop the path to 30 by 30 for coastal waters, stakeholder engagement will be critical to better define what conservation means for California's coastal zone and waters. Currently, California has 34 areas of special biological significance identified. There's 3 national estuary programs. There's 3 national estuarine research reserves and 4 national marine sanctuaries that are critical for conservation. This effort will enable California to develop practical and scientifically based strategies that will get us to 30 by 30 for our coastal regions and ocean waters. Thank you. And now back to Jen.
Hi, everyone. So if you watched our January webinar, you know that we have been working with Esri on a geospatial information system called CA Nature. This system is being designed to be a publicly accessible suite of interactive mapping and visualization tools. CA Nature will bring together maps of biodiversity, climate change, and access, so we can view and analyze different features of the landscape in one place. It will allow us to identify places across California where we have the opportunity to achieve our biodiversity, climate, and equity goals. We will use CA Nature to assess what percentage of California is already conserved and track progress toward our goal. We are currently developing CA Nature using authoritative statewide data that we currently use or have access to. But of course, this is only the first version. We expect to expand this system over time, integrating new data that reflects changes in our understanding and knowledge. Some of you have been asking how you can provide your data for use in CA Nature. There's now a submission form on our website where you can provide information about the data you want us to consider for future versions. I'll tell you that we're most interested in statewide information that meets our program objectives and meets strong scientific data and documentation standards. Please stay tuned for future updates on CA Nature. And now I'll turn it back over to Jenna.
All right, thank you, Jen. As you've heard from Amanda, Jen, and Mark, the state has been busy since Governor Newsom issued the executive order. Let's zoom out and look at where we've been and where we're going next. Since Governor Newsom issued the executive order last October, the California Natural Resources Agency and its partner agencies have made some important progress towards developing these strategies. In January, a kickoff webinar was hosted by the state that drew in over 800 interested parties. We began a formal consultation process with California Native American tribes and continue to host tribal listening sessions in the coming months to share information, solicit tribal input, and collaborate. We have been engaging with interested parties and stakeholders from around the state to hear perspectives and insights related to these efforts. We launched www.californianatureca.gov to serve as a portal for visitors to learn and engage in developing the Pathways to 30 by 30 and the Natural and Working Lands Climate Smart Strategy, but more on that in a moment. We released a public input questionnaire to gather experiences and ideas from a broad cross-section of Californians. The questionnaire is open until May 14th, so please check it out and provide additional information. And today is the third of 9 regional workshops to gather input and perspectives. These virtual webinars are open to all interested parties, no matter where you reside, and you are welcome to attend more than one. This summer, CNRA will convene several topical advisory panels to address key questions to support the development of the Pathways to 30 by 30 document, the Natural and Working Lands Climate Smart Strategy, and the CA Nature GIS tool. Each advisory panel will produce a summary document that gives context to their topic area, offers technical and other insights, and provides key recommendations. Topics will include issues related to climate change, biodiversity, defining conservation, and equitable approaches to this work. The panel will also present their relevant deliberations and recommendations in a 2-part virtual convening, concluding with time for public comment on the topic to be received by CNRA leadership. We'll use the information gathered in the drafting of the Climate Smart Lands Strategy document, which will be released this summer for public review and input. This important document will be finalized and delivered in October as we begin the next phase of this effort. Throughout the fall, we'll host another series of virtual workshops to update the public on our progress and invite more participation. And we'll be drafting and releasing the other strategy document, Pathways to 30 by 30. Just like Climate Smart Lands document, the public's review and input for Pathways to 30 by 30 will be critical. This strategy document will be finalized and delivered in February of 2022. As was mentioned earlier, ongoing public involvement and engagement remains critically important to the state, even as we continue to navigate the COVID-19 pandemic. The collaborative process is a significant aspect of how we will be able to achieve the goals outlined in the executive order. And as conditions approve, we look forward to scheduling in-person opportunities to get your insights and perspectives. To support this effort, we've launched a new website, www.californianature.ca.gov, to serve as the portal of information about advancing 30 by 30 and climate smart lands. This new website features information about the executive order, how nature-based solutions work, important data on climate change in California, ways to get involved through regional workshops and other events, as well as a place to share your insights. The website is integral to ensuring that the state has robust public engagement in meeting the goals of this effort. That's why www.californianature.ca.gov also features an interactive public input questionnaire designed to solicit input that can be used in developing the two main strategy documents to guide the work we must do as a state. Be sure to visit www.californianature.ca.gov to learn more. Share your input and keep informed as we work to achieve these critical goals. And we want to stay in touch. Please contact us, ask questions, and provide your experiences and ideas via these multiple platforms. I'm going to turn it now over to Cici Vu for exploring the region segment of this workshop. Thanks.
Thank you, Jenna. Now we are moving into the portion of today's workshop that focuses in on regional perspective and provide an opportunity for you to participate in this process. Today's regional workshop is in the Central Coast region. For our purposes, this region consists of Santa Cruz, Monterey, San Benito, San Luis Obispo, and Santa Barbara counties. Over 1.5 million people call the Central Coast region home. Of the 9 regions, it includes the longest stretch of coastline. Although the Big Sur State Park and coastline is one of the most well-known coastlines in the United States, this region also includes a diverse range of natural lands, including, of course, popular beaches around Monterey Bay and Santa Barbara, and hiking and camping throughout the coastal range and volcanic rock formations at Pinnacles National Park. Visitor tourism accounts for $3.3 billion, or 13.5% of the region's revenue. This represents the highest proportion of total taxable sales for an individual region, yet it is still less than half the agricultural revenue, which is the third highest in the state and totals $7.8 billion. Among other agricultural products, the Central Coast region's leading commodities include strawberries and miscellaneous vegetables such as broccoli and artichokes, the official state vegetable of California. As you probably know, the Central Coast region is rich in both natural and agricultural lands. The region's land cover is primarily dominated by shrubland, 28% of the total area, grassland, 23%, and treed forests, 20%. Additional land area is classified as cropland, 6%, settlement, 4%, which includes developed land, roads, infrastructure, and rocky and barren land, 2%, and wetlands, 1%. Within the region, water, including nearshore ocean, covers approximately 15% of the total area. This is a dynamic region that contributes greatly to the state. We wanted to provide this regional snapshot before we dive further into our meeting. Your perspective will be important as we move into the next section where we engage with you and gather your feedback on a series of questions that will be used in developing the strategies you've heard about. Since we're in a virtual setting, we will be conducting an online polling activity to capture your responses on screen so that others can collectively view and experience it. The polling tool will also save your written responses, which will help inform the deliverables that Jen and Amanda spoke of. You can participate in 3 ways. 1, on your computer by opening the browser and going to, I'm going to slowly read it. It's also on your screen, pollev.com/KWPOLL1. The second way is on your smartphone by opening a browser and going to the same address, pollev.com/KWPOLL1. Or the third way, using text by sending KWPOLL1 to the number 22333. For phone-only participants, I'm going to say it again. Please text the phrase KWPOLL1 to the number 22333. Hopefully everyone got that. Please use your preferred option to respond to 3 questions that I will now pose. Let's begin. Question 1, where are you located? Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, some San Franciscans from here, Cambria, Monterey, Santa Cruz, Fremont, I think St. Helena, Hollister, Goleta, Gilroy, Sacramento visitors here today, Morro Bay, Paso Robles, I think Santa Barbara has it. Okay, and we have a Oakland visitor as well. Thank you for these responses. I think we're going to move on to question 2 now. What sector do you represent? So far, it looks like our non-governmental community-based organizations have it. Over 50% of you all here are in that category sector. We have government at 21%. We have equal participation from our business, investor, and labor community and the general public. We have a few academics in the room. Looks like we have a small tribal government, tribal community representation. But yes, it looks like our non-governmental and community-based organization are the popular participants in the room today. Let's move on to the next question. When you think about nature or special places in this region, what comes to mind? Gaviota Coast, Carrizo, which is what Jen was describing, wetlands, Big Sur, Gaviota, monarch butterfly, marine coast, frog, Montana, lots of beaches I see, but it looks like Big Sur is what predominantly comes to everyone's minds. There's salamander, woodlands, estuary, of course, Monterey, and Gaviota. Great. Thank you all for your responses and your participation here today. We're going to move on from our polling exercise here. It was really fun to see. And so this activity just gives you a little bit of flavor of how we will be requesting your feedback in this next part of the meeting. We'll segue there to further help inform the development of the natural and working lands climate smart strategy and the 30 by 30 pathways, and of course, also around equitable access to nature. As we have a large number of participants, I think we have about over 200 participants here today. We'll now transition into breakout groups. I think we're going to transition into 3 breakout groups today so that your feedback can most effectively be given and captured. In the breakout session, I'm just going to take a little bit of time to describe. We will be asking you to provide your experiences and ideas in 3 areas for your region: interests and current efforts, challenges, and opportunities. I'm going to spend a few minutes just right now to explain some of the logistics, so please bear with me. We ask that phone-only participants, I think I see a couple, remain in this main room so we can accommodate you. Please deny any prompt to join the breakout. We are asking participants who requested interpretation upon registration to remain in this main room as well. Other webinar participants will be randomly assigned to one of the 3 breakout rooms. A little bit more details on some of the questions and responses in the breakout. We will capture webinar your participants' feedback in the breakout room, similarly to how we've done so in the plenary session. We might not run the word cloud, but you will be able to see each other's responses. There are a number of questions we'd like to get through. So again, please share brief responses. You'll be able to see others' responses and reflect on them. Our team will synthesize the common themes from your responses and incorporate them into a meeting summary, which will be made publicly available. We will treat all responses equally. If you need more time to think through your responses, please remember that you can always submit them via the public input questionnaire that our presenters have talked about today on the state's website at californianature.ca.gov. Now, we're going to begin the process of assigning you to your breakout group. A facilitator will meet you in your breakout room, but they may be arriving after you, so please hang tight. Please follow the message prompt on your screen and have fun. We're going to go now. I'm going to give it a few minutes so our participants can land safely in their breakout room. Okay, our tech support team, are we ready for this breakout activity? Okay, great. Let's see, I'm just going to,
CC, I was just wondering, Monda and myself are both in this one. I don't think you wanted both of us in the same one.
Oh, yeah. Let's contact our tech support team, see if we can fly Mark to another breakout room, because I think, Mark, you were in here last time.
Oh, you're sick of me. I get it.
Well, I want to spend some time with Amanda too. Okay, let's try to get Mark over, and then I'm just going to start. Mark, you'll catch up to the other breakout room, and that way we won't keep our participants waiting. So it looks like we have 2 phone participants, and I'm going to ask for your patience because we're a bit mixed in here with our webinar participants who have access to a browser and can see the screen. So I'm going to read some instructions for our webinar folks first. And you all, oh, excuse me. Sorry, okay. So I'm going to read some instructions to our webinar participants so we can get started with some of the questions and the responses. So you've all landed in a room today where we are accommodating not only webinar users, but phone-only participants, as well as non-English speaking participants. So please bear with me as we go through some layers of instructions. So welcome to our accommodations room, we call it. Again, we will, in this session, we'll be organizing questions around 3 main themes: regional interests and current efforts, challenges and opportunities. We'll be using the same polling tool that we use in the plenary. Participants using the web browser, again, you see on your screen, you'll need to re-enter the link into your browser. It's KWPOLL2 this time, rather than 1. Participants responding by text will need to text to the following number. It's 22333. Reminder on that. The facilitation team here will insert the instructions into the chat, so look for those instructions if you miss them. They will also be available on the top of each of the Poll Everywhere slides. So look for those instructions as well. We'll be inviting public feedback in response to 10 total questions today. And you'll have approximately 5 to 6 minutes to respond to each. And we will be informing you when there's, giving you a 2 and a 1 minute warning, basically. And please take your time in crafting responses to the questions. And please, we encourage you to look at and reflect on others' responses here. But we do request that you limit your responses to a sentence so that we can actually see and reflect on what you're writing, if possible. And of course, you can share more than 1 response. After you submit it, we will invite you all again to reflect what is shared. And if you need to provide more in-depth responses, we're asking you to think about the public input questionnaire and provide your responses in that format. Also, please recall that we're being recorded here in this room, and we're also streaming live. And then we'll also be recording your responses in a summary that will be made available for public viewing. If there's a high volume of responses, you may not get to see your responses. It's going to scroll up, as you can see. Okay, so I think we're going to move into instructions for phone-only participants. So just so you know, let me get those out. At any time during a session, you encounter technical issues, phone callers. We have a phone number for you to call. I'm going to repeat it a couple of times: 760-690-7664. I'm going to repeat it one more time: 760-690-7664 for any technical issues for our phone callers. And we recognize that you are calling by phone because you might not have access to a computer. But we do ask that if you can, text in your responses. That way we can capture them more accurately. You also have the option to provide your responses verbally. In that case, I'm going to just check in with you to see if you, and ask you to unmute. And that's a *9 function. And then once you unmute, it's going to, I'm going to ask you to unmute. I'm sorry, I'm going to back up. *9 to raise your hand to let me know that you have a question, and then I'll check in with you, and then I'll ask you to unmute. And at that time, you will *6 to unmute yourself and speak your response, and we'll record that. And then I'll put you back on mute. Okay, and we're asking you again to keep your responses brief. The other way that you can provide comment is by emailing californianature@resources.ca.gov. californianature@resources.ca.gov. You can also call and leave a voicemail at 1-800-417-0668. Okay, we really appreciate your understanding as we strive to provide the most equitable ways for you to participate and provide feedback here. So we're going to jump in now to the questions. And we have some slides here, and I'll read the questions for our phone callers. Question 1, thinking about biodiversity in this region, what species, habitat, or places are important to you to protect? Thinking about biodiversity in this region, what species, habitat, or places are important to protect? So we're going to give it a couple of seconds for responses to come through. It's a thought-provoking question, so we're going to give you a little bit more time. So we're talking about biodiversity, including all life, variety of life that's found on the earth, including plants, animals, fungi, microorganisms, what you name it, and as well as natural communities that they form, the ecosystems and habitat where they live.
CC,
Tech team, yes.
CC, can we make sure that people are responding to KW poll 2, not KW poll 1?
All right. Again, we are transitioning from our the plenary where we were doing the word cloud exercise. So the address is pollv.com/KWPOLL2. And if you need to text it, you text it to, you text KWPOLL2 to the number 22333. If you look on your screen, if you're a webinar user, so that poll, the KW, I think we're taking it offline to troubleshoot. You know, virtual meetings. Anyway, I think you all could take some time right now to think about this question. I can also start to, here we go, we're on. Thinking about biodiversity in this region, what species, habitats, or places are important to protect? Condor habitat, I'm sorry I didn't catch the first. Gaviota Coast. The entire watershed, including stream and riparian corridors, wetlands, and coastal zones. Equitable human species habitat, of course, important. Extensive coastal dune complexes. Nearshore tidal pools, steelhead trout. Here's a Carrizo Plain grasslands ecosystem, including all endangered and listed species, riparian wetland habitats, areas of wild coast that are missed by current land. Did I miss that? Grunions. The question also presumes somehow that something should be unprotected. Hedgerows and buffers surrounding ag fields, native grasslands and oak savannas. Adopt agroecology as California state policy for managing farm. Monarchs, Diablo Canyon lands. Here's another monarch butterfly roost habitat, marine and estuarine habitats and species, salt marsh, creeks and rivers, grasslands, watersheds, a long list of biodiversity, redwood forests, dunes, steelhead trout, rare plants. We have grassland again, tiger salamander, serpentine rare plant habitat, oak woodlands and savanna, places where stormwater goes, wetlands, endangered species, the steelhead trout. Wetlands is a recurring response. Anadromous fish, floodplains, and estuaries. All biodiversity is important. Agreed. Wildlife, working rangeland and annual grasslands, migratory bird habitat, threatened and endangered species. Coastlines, streams, groundwater dependent ecosystems. San Luis Obispo Greenbelt. We have another Gaviota Coast region. Sea stars, one of my favorites. Farmland soil biology. Commercial fishing habitat, access and infrastructure. Eelgrass. Oak woodlands, Diablo lands, the Gaviota coast, particularly coastal access. Eva, I'm going to ask you to make note of some of these responses while I check in with our phone callers. Is that okay? Great. Phone callers, do you have any responses that you'd like to share verbally if you can't text? To raise your hand, *9. Okay. Great, I don't see any hands raised. So I'm going to move back. And how are we doing on time, team?
We can move on in about a minute, CC.
Okay. Kelp, mountain lion habitat areas and fewer roads fragmentation, rare plants, Gaviota coast, grasslands, wetlands, geologic wonders of San Benito County, pinnacles, and San Benito Mountain, extreme serpentine, rare natural communities that are recognized by the California Native Plant Society, wildlife corridors between habitat for migratory animals, dunes in Pismo, coastal dunes, of course. Humans are important along with all the other living beings. Environmental justice communities, for sure. Why not protect all the species in the ecosystem? So everything's important. Salt marsh, tide pools, we have our steelhead trout, Nipomo dunes and other dune ecosystems, grazing lands where carbon sequestration can take place, San Lucia Mountains, Carmel River watershed, and the steelhead population, Big Sur coast and redwood groves, restoration of ocean dunes, Oceano dunes, headwaters of major rivers. I think we're going to read a couple of more and then move on to question 2. Cuyama Valley, oak woodlands, restoration of native plants and monarchs. All right, team, let's move on to question 2. Thinking about the Central Coast region, what nature-based climate solutions are important to you? Give you a few minutes. Carbon sequestration, kelp restoration, for sure. Soil-based carbon sequestration, coastal wetlands restoration, restoration of wetlands and other degraded lands, kelp restoration, another recurring. With their guidance, indigenous Chumash wildfire management techniques, tree planting, traditional ecological knowledge for managing land and ocean, managed retreat, incorporating living shorelines into management, protected areas, black abalone restoration, habitat protection, coastal blue carbon eelgrass marsh kelp carbon drawdown and ocean acidification amelioration, use of dunes, living shorelines, dune restoration, green infrastructure to treat stormwater, retaining natural land cover in the wildlands, more permaculture practices in agriculture, domestic seafood production to reduce reliance on imports and elevated GHG costs of imports, routine continuous controlled burns, long-term monitoring followed by restoration, regenerative ag on rangeland, restore sediment flow, ecosystem restoration camps to mobilize youth and volunteers, restoring natural habitat, preventing soil loss, native habitat, improve protections for and management of public lands, regenerative ag, adapt agroecology, saw that. Oak, woodland, and forest restoration, efforts to bolster water availability. These are just some really rich answers and responses. Riparian and waterway restoration, protecting tribal cultural sites, preventing land use change outside of current urban boundaries, regardless of biological importance, coastal preservation and restoration, open space, landscape as buffers from fire, sand dune habitat restoration, regenerating soil, carbon, and native habitat. I'm going to take a break and check in with our phone callers. Any raised hands, phone participants? *9 to have the opportunity to verbalize your answers. It seems like you all are able to text, but I'll just keep checking back periodically. Local mariculture, habitat corridor restoration, sediment management through watersheds to nourish the beach. Another wetlands, well-funded local and private land stewardship, restore and enhance chaparral ecosystems, sediment flow restoration for sand and beach replenishment, mitigation of sea level rise, water infiltration of landscape, illegal pot growing cleanup and restoration of habitat, restorative ag, carbon drawdown, using studies of sediment movement along the coast to inform management and not using coastal armoring, green buffer zones. What is non-nature-based solutions? Preventing sprawl, arundo removal. Team, how are we doing on time for this question?
Let's move on in about a minute.
Okay. I'll read off a few more here. Less human impact. Protecting open space to prevent sprawl of development. Another dune ocean spatial planning. Protecting land that can play a role as future habitat to facilitate inland migration of coastal habitat. Reduce soil disturbance and control stream sedimentation, dam removal, elimination of wood burning heating, elimination of smoke and campfires, co-management of natural resources, another kelp restoration, stop conversion of vineyards, education, shaded parks and trails and access to beaches to give people respite from heat, prevention of coastal armoring. I'm going to read off a few more and then we can move on to question 3. Invasive species eradication, limits of excessive tourists providing restrooms, limit domestic dog access to coastal beach and habitats. Coastal and beach habitats. Okay, last one. Solutions that have scientific and reproducible results please. Okay, next question. With regard to 30 by 30 and or nature-based solutions, how can we advance equity and the opportunity in this region? So here's a question around equity and equitable access and opportunity in this region. Take some time to think. How would we, what are some of your views on advancing equitable access? Anti-displacement policies. It's a thought-provoking question, so we'll take some time with it. I'm going to check in with our phone callers. *9 phone callers if you'd like to speak your answer or your response. Here we go. More transportation options to access places. Eliminate all warning and danger label pesticides and heavily taxed nitrate. This is a long one, so I'm going to read it there. Living shorelines. Create more nature-based solution jobs. Here's the career piece that Amanda was talking about. Funding for, sorry, I missed that one. Listen in a meaningful way, not just checking the box. Consult with community-based organizations. Reach out to historically underrepresented groups. Focus on EJ communities. Education opportunities. Provide public trails. Education, job training, jobs for climate resilience in communities, environmental education. More support for family, larger group gathering opportunities. Barbecue pits. Help connect underserved communities to natural places through, here's an education piece again. Funding for open space in disadvantaged communities. Acknowledge existing stakeholder processes. Spend conservation dollars in areas away from, sorry, I missed that one. Remove equity requirements from any and all funding sources and separately fund projects that specifically target equity. Non-corporate agriculture for families. Accurate and full translation for multiple languages. Better transportation and access to trails. Remove and restore brownfields and other degraded sites. Improve existing stakeholder processes. Green space, protection of open, there's an affordable housing component there. Use the national and state parks for nature access. More transparency in local governments in the area. Prioritizing communities who have less public space than more affluent neighborhoods. Get oil companies to transition its job to green energy jobs. Provide funding and support. Support sustainable agriculture farm visits. Fund EJ neighborhoods directly. Increase access to public lands for outdoor recreation. More opportunities to embed folks in nature as youth. Application of technology, resource management, conservation planning with tribal groups. Capacity funding to engage more people in the process, understand the obstacles and develop solutions together, improve stakeholder process to increase public recreation opportunities, acquire properties or easements to reestablish public access, integrate pest management to reduce and eliminate pesticides in ag areas, donate. Environmental justice, support the collaborative efforts to design the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary. Youth leadership programs to work on nature-based strategies. Here's another tribal piece. Develop solutions that do not displace existing livelihoods. Displacement theme. Fund the removal of oil infrastructure and OTC power plants. Jobs for dismantling oil and gas production and replacing them with jobs in renewable energy production on the ocean, lands, and homes. Here's another affordable housing It looks like it's slowing down. I'm gonna check in with our phone callers. *9 if you'd like to speak a response. Okay. Keep the land unavailable for development. Donate to local job profits that are focused on Central Coast resources. Host a unit of new climate conservation corps proposed by the president. Co-op farming lands to allow for new farmers to engage. Fund cleanup of oil, another oil cleanup so desalination plants, tidal energy generation. Proactively avoid gentrification, another displacement of current residents. New acquisition another land acquisitions for public access. Efforts to keep recreation activities on public lands free and affordable. Engage tribes. How are we doing on time?
Let's move on to the next one.
Very rich exchange on equity here. Okay, let's move on. Involve youth of color from the get-go. Right, let's move on to our question 4A. What is working in this region to conserve lands and/or coastal waters and implement nature-based solutions to climate change? So here we're really interested in success stories, marine protected areas, and any existing strategies, programs, projects, or initiatives that you think are working well. Fisheries management processes, weed management areas, coordination at the local and regional level, MPAs, abalone farming, broad collaboration, conservation seed banking of rare plants, current ocean MPA, agree, seems to be working, conservation easements, active land trusts on numerous projects, defend open lands from commercial development, Gaviota, namely, blue carbon development, successful partnerships, collaborative peace. Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary is going through the NOAA approval process. Ecosystem-based management, stream flow enhancement programs, stakeholder processes for fisheries, grassroots nonprofits, Gaviota Coast Conservancy, network of marine protected areas, including Morro Bay, Alcorn Slough estuaries that Jen was speaking of, conservation easement, land trust, another land trust specifically in Santa Cruz, conservation easements, local profit land trusts, the local government, community organizing to purchase land that is up for development, rangeland conservation programs, kelp and sea urchin farmers, organic and regenerative farmers, education policy activists, CBOs, grassroots, expanding blue carbon, Elkhorn Slough education program, conservation easements, fee title acquisition, the Nature Conservancy, Surf Rider, Sustainable Ag Land Conservation Program, many successes. This is great to see. Recent decision to end off-road vehicle in Oceania, I think. Land trusts, collaboration, regional efforts to protect areas that cross government boundaries. Nature Conservancy, Dangermond Preserve. Coastal Commission ruled to phase out off-road vehicles. Another collaborative piece, networks here. State-federal partnerships. We're getting the theme here on collaboration. California condor population recovery. Sierra Club, Gaviota Coast Conservancy, with exception of urchins in Monterey killing the kelp forest, some MPAs, funding from Wildlife Conservation Board, Hollister Ranch, balanced planning for public access and conservation, 350 Santa Barbara, there's a military base conservation piece, Central Coast Alliance for a United Sustainable Economy, Santa Barbara County Parks, Los Padres Forests, MyCop, that's another collaborative, Hunting and Fishing Guided by Scientific Management Strategies, Coastal Commission, SOAR initiatives to form urban growth boundaries. I'm going to check in with now our 2 phone callers. *9 phone callers if you'd like to provide a verbal response. I'll keep checking. Surfrider, I think that's recurring. Making land accessible to beginner, veteran, BIPOC farmer through land trusts that help small growers lease to buy. Land in public ownership, millions of federal acres equals the core of our wildlands. Fish and game should be considered part of working on this too. Wildlife Conservation Board, public access programs, wildlife movement corridor planning and protection, rooftop solar. How are we doing on time, team?
I think we're good to move on.
Okay. Next question is question 4B. I'm going to get a little head start here. What is working in this region to increase equitable access to nature and its benefits? This is a question again around equity. We're interested in success stories here again, existing strategies, programs, projects, initiatives that you think are working well around equitable access to nature. While we wait for responses to come in, I just want to check in with our phone callers. *9. Okay. You can also, in thinking about this question, consider if there are any specific goals or targets that are supporting these successful efforts. Here we go. Coastal Conservancy grants, public ownership of land, formation of Central Coast Climate Collaborative, this theme of collaboration and networking. Nature Track brings kids out to nature in Santa Barbara. Sounds like a great program for youth. Just waiting for more responses to filter in. Here we go. Public lands, environmental literacy programs, waterfront boardwalks and trails, generally good proximity to natural landscapes, creating trail and conservation easements. Gaviota is an example. Opening Cotonee Coast Dairies unit of the California Coastal National Monument in Santa Cruz County. Check in with our phone callers. I don't see any hands raised. Are participants just thinking, tech team, or is it just a slowdown for our tool here?
I think people are just thinking real hard.
Yeah. I'm going to have to look up this Cotonee Coast Dairies unit program. Free access, so there's the affordability piece. Public coastal access, boardwalks and trails, land trusts purchasing properties, the schools and youth piece, engaging wilderness youth project, protecting our watersheds funded by the Miosi Charitable Trust. Make sure there's a trailhead within walking distance of every neighborhood. It is sad that I don't know. Signage interpretation in multiple languages, engagement with BIPOC communities, Greenbelt projects, but so far only next to the wealthier neighborhoods. Well-regulated commercial fisheries providing access to, sorry, I missed that one. Currently, something in Hollister, Santa Rosa Island Research Station outreach. I would like a better definition of what the agreed upon measurement would be to which to say equity has an effect. Central Coast Climate Justice Network, Arroyo Hondo Preserve, Watershed Steward Program, Elkhorn Slough Reserve Trails, California Coastal Trail Connections to support sustainable fishing. Measurement, so definite measurement would be, this is the same request. Greenbelt projects, but so far only next, okay. It looks like this is cycling through. Cause and other EJ groups. Public beaches for all. Documentary Gaviota, the end of Southern California. Okay, make note of that. Encouraging access to under-resourced communities for recreation and spiritual use. Santa Barbara's Maricos School Program, funding for California Coastal Trails. Santa Maria Levee Trail, the Marine Science Institute. Wilderness at risk youth programs, access to land trust. Engage local Chumash to share visions. Trail and multimodal, I'm thinking it's multimodal connections through Guadalupe. Santa Barbara Botanic Garden is starting Spanish language tours. That's good to know. Okay. How are we on time? Should we move on to the next bilingual outreach and education materials around language? Great. The state of California is committed to conserving 30% of its lands and coastal waters by 2030. What does conservation mean to you? Perpetuity. Conservation easements. Well-regulated sustainable uses. No development. Seeing more green. Okay, delist, I'm going to try to read a little bit of it. Delist all warning and danger label pesticides. Conservation means permanent. Maintaining ecosystem productivity with native species in the face of climate change. Ecosystem function protection of. Thrivability, not just sustaining, but thriving. Intact habitat and biodiversity, including human exclusion. Regenerative uses for people and wildlife. Connectivity, wildlife habitat protect in perpetuity. Eliminate pesticides. Conservation and here's the perpetuity piece. Conservation means protecting not just places, but all of the creatures that live in and depend on them. Protecting and stewarding lands. Where appropriate, allowing for uses that are compatible with ecosystem health. Someone is summing up thrivability. No development. Addressing cumulative impacts. Resilient to climate change impacts. persistence and resilience of that community for centuries. So the perpetuity piece. Stewardship in agroecological practices. Encourage regenerative ag. Water quality. Preserved and protected to maintain the ecosystems. Living in harmony in and near nature. Managing human impact on natural resources. Plastics, removing them from ocean, inland waters, and land. Using less than what is reasonably expected. Protect biodiversity, intersectional environmentalism. Conserving places that have outsized importance to the ecosystem, such as coastal wetlands and eelgrass. Cultural as well. Flowing water for ecosystems. Conservation means tempering the disproportionate impact that humans have on the environment and mitigating it whenever possible. I don't think can discuss conservation of air, sorry, I missed that. Air quality, preventing development. Ocean and lands that produce healthy food. Sustaining species and their habitat to help, sorry. A network of protected linkages connecting the coast, provide funding, understanding the potential environmental impacts, cultural resources, respecting the land and coastal waters, planned retreat, explore fire management systems without eliminating, sorry, I didn't catch that, wildlife corridors, multi-benefits, protects humans against climate threats as well as species and biodiversity. We have one phone caller left. Do we have would you like to make a verbal response? Okay. Landscape scale. Protecting and preserving traditional indigenous lands and their cultural resources. Shall we move on after a couple of more? Reduce fossil fuel emissions that reduce quality of life for people and nature. Conservation includes a linkage between a healthy environment and healthy economy. Let's move on. So we're moving on in question 6 to our second topic, which is around regional challenges. And there's just one question here, a two-part question. Please describe the greatest challenges to conserving lands, money, and coastal waters and implementing nature-based solutions to climate change. Top answer is funding. Yeah. Will. Funding and staff capacity. Okay, I'm going to try to read the first. University and extension are functionally marketing arms for pesticide industry. Profit over the environment. We need more conservation professionals, so careers. Doing conservation and restoration at scale. Large populations are not connected. Another funding. Humans. The amount of time to put projects and partners together. Answer is around money. How best to work with current private owners to engage. Education. Lack of adequate and sustained funding from both state and federal sources. Ability to engage in multi-stakeholder planning. Changing our priorities to focus on meaningful change and not profits. Capacity funding needed for everyone to engage in planning. Not listening to those on the ground, water. Compromise between people with differing priorities, viewpoints. Community identify an organization to represent. Pressure to develop Gaviota Coast. Population, growth-based economy, willing landowners, informing the public about why this matters to all of us. The environment is not a special interest. Identifying opportunities to work with industry, private landowners on solutions, those who believe that they won the coast, meeting both the challenges of housing and climate, providing the connection for people on why it's important, top-down instead of community-based planning, the dispersion of population centers, changing old planning departments, people misconstruing the California housing crisis to spur development of cheap sprawl instead of urban infill, housing needs, unequal access to decision makers. Small coastal properties receive the most attention and usually have the least positive gains for sustaining wildlife. Death by 1,000 cuts to estuaries. Suggest state of, I'm sorry, I missed that one. Lack of resources allocated to CDFW. Costs of buying the land and subsequent land. Water quality and impacts. Well-being for people without hurting the environment. Cultural misunderstandings. It's just not a priority to those who are not connected to the land. Changing behaviors that relate to natural resource and use and protection. Corporations, constant disaster cycle. Boom. Inequities. Cost and value of property is very expensive to conserve. Acquisition and restoration costs. Attachment to traditional single-family homes, San Luis Obispo's small home project. Developing new building codes. How are we doing on time, team, on this question? Shall we move on?
Give another minute or so.
Okay. Communities disconnected from their environment. Wildfire management and resource allocation. It often comes down to what is conservation, doesn't it? Yes. Many of our ranchers are excellent stewards of land, but too often, I'm sorry, it just got cut off. A lack of access to and therefore appreciation of wildlife and habitat in the inner coast ranges. Personal freedom mentality, not obeying rules with too large a population. Okay, I think this might be a good segue to the next question. Shifting baselines. Please describe the greatest challenges to increasing equitable access to nature and its benefits. Again, top liner is affordability, money, costs, funding. Access points limited. A lack of sustained funding from both state and federal source. Changing the status quo. Landowners. BIPOC people don't feel welcome. Public affordable transportation infrastructure. Another transportation, creating safe spaces for all to feel welcome. We're killing nature in toxic pesticides. Less nature to share. Keeping up with the technology. Absence of wildlands near communities. Willingness to make the change needed. Yet you versus them mentality. Us versus them, sorry. Spatially unequal recreation opportunities. Private land ownership. Cost of school buses. Environmental justice is not moving fast enough. People who are not wealthy or powerful have less leverage. Poverty, jobs far from homes, lack of green and walkable spaces in poorer communities. One size fits all solutions. Human behavior. Transportation to trailheads. Greed. Environmental community is white, middle class, doesn't represent the broader community. Entitlement. So maybe there's an educational career component there. Some bodies increase equitable access will often be seen as or perceived as loss of access by others. Underinvestment in low-income communities of color. Listening to needs of disadvantaged communities during planning. Decreasing access to public lands, particularly federal lands. Poor air and water quality in lower income BIPOC regions. Need to make an take on environmental justice issues. Spraying of pesticides in ag lands abutting a high school in Santa Maria, use of chemicals in strawberry farms and impact on workers. Thank you for those examples. Special interests. Definitely an underinvestment in low-income communities of color. Benefits best be described if, again, we had some agreed upon measurement. Closures of public lands due to wildfires. It's definitely a big problem. I think we're slowing down on response. Need more people of color in environmental jobs, careers. Not knowing that some of these environmental justice things are happening. Thank you for sharing. We're having some reflections on others' responses. This is great. Not meaningfully engaging stakeholders when developing solutions. Access to trailheads in wealthy communities. Limited access to keep people away from sensitive species, i.e. snowy plover at Surf Beach. Most BIPOC communities see pollution as the biggest hurdle, often ignorant of invasive species, habitat fragmentation, and other elements of current landscape of challenges. Not enough funding or community-based outreach organizations. Very thoughtful responses. Thank you all. How are we on time, team? Investing in low return strategies instead of scaling up public lands and access to match our population growth and demands. Here's a career jobs response. Hire BIPOC folks. Fear of illegal activity in forests, grows, etc. Balancing overuse and degradation of recreation areas with access, increased access with increased education is necessary. Shall we move on to the next question? These are just very rich responses that we will definitely capture. Making connection between food security. Okay, this next segment, we're going to focus in on opportunities. And here we have two questions, and I think we're nearing the end of our time together. What does long-term success look like for climate smart land management in this region? So we're thinking about longer term successful outcomes here. You could inform paradise on earth. You could consider both higher level, regional level outcomes as well as local projects, restoration of native landscapes, measurable negative emissions. The ocean continues to cool lands during the summer. Green belts define extent of urban and rural boundaries. collaborative interaction between local, state, federal, government agencies, NGOs, stakeholders, tribes to plan and collaborate, public acquisition of lands, protection of areas needed, migration space, future habitat areas with sea level rise, sustain funding for nature-based efforts to address climate change, low irrigation land uses, go big, revisit the national seashore. Sorry, I can't catch this whole paragraph here. Greater carbon sequestration in estuaries and woodlands. New green energy job sector, take over dirty oil jobs, I think that was. Successful co-management efforts that include all communities. A mosaic of land uses with supportive policies for ag. Prevention of coastal armoring. Persistence of populations and communities even as the region heats up. Sustainable water basins. Raising of coastal highways and railroads. A permanently conserved network of wildlands with public access connecting all of our coast ranges and their wildlife. Lower water use in ag, but greater productivity. Rivers are full of water and fish. Regenerative ag and soil carbon sequestration, blue carbon, plan coastal retreat, cessation of coastal dune developments, urban parks and blending of nature in cities where people live, protected wildlife corridors and habitat, manage retreat of areas so there would be space for migration of habitat, cleaning up oil pollution and contamination, infill development. I can't keep up. These are some really visually inspiring responses. Success in management responds to access needs as the growth change. Parks and recreation areas near populated areas. Successful climate resiliency efforts for coastal areas. Dynamic and growing tourism and working ag fisheries communities, economies without degrading our natural resources. Ag land and open space as wildfire buffers. Infill develop, no more development in the WUI. Return of lands to First Nations. Adaptive management. Reduce vehicular traffic. Keep ag land and prevent their conversion. Restored flow regimes in our steelhead streams. Protect endangered species, protection of bluffs and creek mouths. Establishment of wild refuge in Salinas Valley. Collaboration of organizations that manage lands already. Get national and local groups together equals stronger. Better water management. Protection of working rangeland using conservation easements. Do you think we can move on now, team, to question 8? These were great responses. Our last question is, what does success look like for 30 by 30? So thinking ahead to 30 by 30, what do you hope has happened in your region around biodiversity? Protection of representative habitats. Money is flowing quickly and projects are getting done. A conserved Gaviota coast. A safe pathway for wolves to wander. Wouldn't that be a sight? All of California's natural biodiversity survives and the adverse impacts of climate change. A mix of public lands and protected private ranch lands. Permanent conservation of areas vulnerable to development. Include rare habitats, like coastal habitats, well-funded community and ag land trusts, all native populations of plant and wildlife species. Each of our coast ranges is permanently connected through wildlands. More than 30% of land seascapes conserved before 2030. Focus on quality, not just quantity. A vision that continues to be implemented for decades. Permanent conservation, smart ag, protection of areas with high carbon sequestration, increased awareness of importance and benefits of preserving biodiversity. People in the region live lives close to nature and find great joy in their quality of life, an equity piece there. Every community is surrounded by and thriving. Protection of Central Coast with Chumash heritage, meeting recovery goals of listed species, unnecessary crops that are lowering water tables, sound management of other 70%, healthy and productive lands, waters, and wildlife so that North American heritage of hunting and fishing can be preserved. Endangered species are increasing in population rather than decreasing, avoiding paper parks. Growing populations of monarchs, steelhead, giant sea bass, badgers, inclusion of indigenous communities in conservation, CDFW region that is not managed out of Fresno, incentivizing and supporting small-scale farmers working on carbon sequestration, reduce impact of climate threats, balance between private and public interests, pollinators return. All citizens value open space based on good experiences, another equity piece, allowing for compatible uses. Humans are educated on how to live in harmony with nature. Protection of our open lands, recovery of riparian corridor monarchs come back in record numbers. Engagement, enjoyment, and conservation being important over profit. Old policies that inhibit conservation efforts are gone. Limited pesticide use. Our water basins are sustainable. Protection of areas that will serve as important habitat areas of the future in the face of climate impacts. Counting on all efforts to conserve biodiversity. Sustained and permanent funding for agencies that manage land, waters, and wildlife. Collaborative, affordable housing development and open space planning, bringing back historic habitats and restoration. Vibrant mariculture production, exporting energy to other. More indigenous-owned lands where traditional environmental protection methods can be implemented. Another affordable housing piece. Our Coast Range protected as a national monument. This is thank you so all for your rich responses. This is a question that invokes a lot of inspiration and landscape level approaches, connectivity, national seashore. Apologies for my child in the background. Air is clear and pure. Campfire smoke has been eliminated. So we're at 5:57. We want to get everyone out of the meeting on time. And so I think I'm going to cap it here. Thank you again all for sharing your ideas and experiences today. And again, just a reminder that this workshop's been recorded and will be available online at californianature.ca.gov. We will be posting the meeting summary with comments captured during these meetings. And you can also provide feedback again today using the public input questionnaire. We will also have an evaluation form emailed to you. And we invite you to stay connected by visiting californianature.ca.gov. There you can provide additional written comments to that questionnaire. I'm repeating myself, and sign up for future events. And thank you again. I want to turn it over to Amanda Hansen to provide some closing remarks. Amanda.
Just a quick word to thank everyone for your time and your input. As Cece mentioned, it is all being compiled, and it will be incredibly helpful to myself and to Jen and to all of the other state agencies that we're partnering with to build out these strategies. So really appreciate your time and look forward to your input on drafts as they come out, and engaging in other opportunities to share your perspectives. This has been incredibly helpful and really appreciate your time again. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. I think we hope you had fun today. So we are not going back into plenary with the other groups in breakout. So we're ending the meeting here today. You may exit the meeting by clicking leave meeting at the bottom. And we're going to adjourn for today. Again, thank you so much for attending, and we look forward to seeing you at future events. I'm seeing a lot of thank yous in the chat.